off from contributing to the king side, which is where the action is going to take place at this stage. So play can follow. Let me just put some variation in there. The king can get pulled out, checked, and the center starts to collapse with e5, and you really start to see the bishop sniping in. I believe, no, not bishop c6 straight away, queen to e4, and after bishop to f6, there's d6 with an attack against the rook. This is too much for black to parry. This pawn is running really fast. How much further do we go here? Check, king to h8, and you can already promote here. We're getting really fancy, right? Bishop takes queen, game over. Rook takes queen, thank you for the bishop. It can collapse really fast. There is a pawn break, and that d pawn can run. So, in the game, we have bishop to f6, rook to f1. I really can't wrap my head around the reason behind rook on h to f1 versus rook d to f1. I can't assign a good reason for that. It's not to say that there isn't one, it's just I can't really put my finger on that one. What follows is rook to f8, bishop takes bishop, pawn takes, so the king is that much more vulnerable now, less pawn defense, and the rook is inactive now, just staring at its own pawn on a closed file, we can say. No great activity for the black rooks or bishop. And yeah, black is only playing on 2 ranks in this position, and it's very difficult to defend g4 overextended, and soon it will fall. So queen g7, bishop to e2, and queen to h5. If black tries to hang on to this pawn, that's not really hanging on to the pawn because you can capture straight away with rook to g1, and the bishop will be won next. White is crashing through on the g file. So, queen h6, white doubles, g3, that pawn is hunted. No good way to save it. g2, still queen g3 with check, picking the pawn up next. So the king gets on the h file, tries to hide behind this pawn. Queen takes g3, and now the focus is just on consolidating some. First e4, tucking the king away. Plenty of time to make these tidying up type of moves. King safety. Yeah, there's no getting at the white king in this position. Bishop d7. Instructive moment. I think white could go ahead and crash through on f6 right now, but there is no rush. In the game, we have h5. If white goes forward with this, let's just have a look at this variation. In the end, there's bishop takes a4, and if rook takes d6, there's c4. And black will be winning the e pawn. Right, bishop takes c4, there's rook takes e4. And if bishop c2, we exchange bishops and go here. This is still apparently very good for white, but white wants to basically get these 2 pawns and hang on to these 2 guys in the center. Have 2 connected passed pawns. So in the game we have h5, a pawn that is poison. Right? Rook h4 would hit with the skewer. Also, if bishop takes a4 in this position, we have the cool move e5. Right? This pawn is ready to be passed, and the bishop is hit. So no bishop takes a4. A very passive move, rook to f8. If either rook moves, then this pawn could fall next. Bishop to c2, everything is defended. The bishop is now on a protected square. Perfect coordination here by white, and black is basically in Zugzwang. What do you do here? In the game, bishop to e8 is played. We have rook to f3, basically a little waiting move, and black is going to have to give up a pawn shortly. Doing something else at this stage, let's say after rook to f3, rook e7 was played. If the bishop returns to this square, white can focus on the g6 square now. Rook g3 into g6. So that's going to be a problem. The bishop on e8 is there to watch over that square. So in this game, the rook backing up to f3, rook to e7. Also, I believe another point is that if the bishop goes to this square, you can have queen h2. And this can be a great bother, having the queen put pressure on d6, now that the rook isn't on f4. Okay, well in this game, rook e7 is played, and only at this point does white go ahead and crash through, capturing on f6. And we have this ending where white is simply going to keep two connected passed pawns. We know how valuable they can be. At this point, it's only a matter of improving the king and pushing the passed pawns. So let's see how that plays out. Breaking down the structure on the queen side. Yeah, if this pawn lives, it gets to a6, and that a pawn will fall. And that guy will run fast. So b takes a5, king d2, some repositioning, and here go the pawns. There's no stopping it, really. After e5, that's the final move of this game. Black, at this stage, resigns. No good solution here. The threat is to play e6, e7, and then promote, right? If here this is hitting with tempo, this would not be a solution for black. There is no draw here. It would be a draw if you could, let's say, exchange this last pawn, but you're not getting that last pawn. All these pawns will soon fall. Some other variation that interferes with e6 and e7, let's say bishop to b3, you can take a pawn for starters, or immediately go in for this. Who cares about the a pawn? This is a pretty serious threat. Rook d8 and bishop to f5. This is a cool sequence. This whole position right here keeps black frozen. There's no way black can disrupt this formation of the white pieces. And this pawn restricts all black pawns, and the white king can simply improve. So just playing out some moves here. How might play continue? Black could only shuffle at this point. Maybe push. Once the king is here, there's a pretty serious threat. Black has to try something fancy like that and run. Rook takes here is threatening mate. This is threatening mate. It can only be parried in so many ways. Bishop takes pawn. And white would go on to win this position. Something like this.